Vladimir Putin has ruled Russia since 1999. During that time, he's transformed the nation into an authoritarian, militarized powerhouse. He's invaded two neighboring countries, strengthened ties with Syria and Iran, and made it his mission to challenge the Western world order. And so far, it seems to be working. Before we dive deep into this story, make sure to subscribe to Worldline Analysis and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new breakdown like this one. To understand how one man could shape a country so profoundly, we need to look back at the chaos and corruption that consumed Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. When the Berlin Wall came down, a 40-year-old Putin was working undercover in East Germany for the Soviet Security Agency, the KGB. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it split into 15 new countries, including the new Russian Federation. In Putin's eyes, Russia had just lost 2 million square miles of territory. He would later describe this as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Tens of millions of ethnic Russians now found themselves living outside Russia's borders. The new government had to sell off nearly 45,000 state-run businesses, from energy and mining to communications, and chaos followed. The economy crashed, and these massive industries ended up in the hands of a few ultra-wealthy men, now known as Russia's oligarchs. At the same time, the fledgling Russian state struggled to define itself. The country's first president, Boris Yeltsin, was deeply unpopular for his cooperation with the West. To make matters worse, his drinking problem turned him into a public embarrassment. To stay in power, Yeltsin leaned heavily on the oligarchs, giving them enormous political power in return for loyalty. Economic inequality exploded, and this is where Vladimir Putin enters the picture. After leaving the KGB in 1991, he became the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. There, he began granting special treatment to allies in the private sector, helping them build monopolies while limiting their competitors. His influence and connections grew quickly, especially among oligarchs and former KGB officers. With their backing, Putin rapidly rose through the ranks of the new Russian government. In 1999, President Yeltsin appointed him prime minister, even though most Russians barely knew who he was. Putin, a fierce nationalist, believed Yeltsin was letting the United States dominate Russia. He feared that NATO, the alliance created to contain Soviet influence, would expand into newly liberated countries and encircle Russia. His goal became clear: build a strong, stable Russian state capable of projecting power abroad. And soon, he got the perfect opportunity. During the post-Soviet turmoil, violence was rising in Chechnya, a region that had informally seceded in the mid-1990s. In August 1999, a series of bombings in Russian cities, including Moscow, killed more than 300 people. Putin, newly appointed as prime minister, blamed Chechen separatists and vowed to take revenge. He appeared constantly on national television, promising to restore Russia's pride. His approval rating skyrocketed from just 2% to 45%. Later investigations hinted that Russian security services might have had a hand in the bombings, possibly to boost Putin's popularity. But those claims were quickly buried. Russia launched a brutal war in Chechnya, leveling its capital, Grozny, and killing an estimated 80,000 people. Within a year, the region was back under Russian control. In December 1999, Yeltsin resigned, naming Putin acting president. He easily won the 2000 election during the height of the war, and began molding the Russian state in his image. Corruption and cronyism remained central tools of his rule, but Putin soon brought the oligarchs to heel. Those who supported him were rewarded. Those who didn't were crushed. Former oil tycoon and Kremlin critic Mikhail Khodorkovsky, once Russia's richest man, was sentenced to 14 years in prison. His downfall sent a clear message: oppose Putin and you'll pay the price. With the oligarchs subdued, Putin turned his attention outward. At first, relations with the United States seemed friendly. He even visited George W. Bush's summer home, where Bush famously said, "I looked the man in the eye and found him trustworthy." But things quickly shifted. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia, a former Soviet republic, claiming to defend pro-Russian separatists. Russia seized 2 regions, drawing worldwide condemnation. Interestingly, Putin wasn't technically president at the time. He had swapped roles with his ally Dmitry Medvedev to dodge term limits. But make no mistake, he was still the one in charge. When Barack Obama took office later that year, he tried to reset relations with Russia, even signing nuclear reduction agreements. But Putin, deeply distrustful of U.S. motives, viewed Western actions, especially NATO's and America's interventions in the Middle East, as direct threats. By 2012, Putin was back as president, winning an election widely seen as rigged. He returned to power amid protests and dissent, and responded with a crackdown. He tightened control over the media, ensuring nearly all television networks became government propaganda outlets. Dissent was crushed. Opposition groups, activists, and journalists were silenced. He even used state media to publicly humiliate and imprison feminist punk group Pussy Riot after their anti-Putin protest inside a Moscow cathedral. Internationally, Putin expanded Russia's influence through military power and cyber warfare. His forces supported Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad with weapons, airstrikes, and troops. Meanwhile, Russian hackers, some state-backed, others private contractors, waged cyber attacks across the globe. They stole U.S. government data, hacked politicians' emails, shut down Georgia's internet during the invasion, and interfered in the 2016 U.S. election. They also pushed online propaganda to boost right-wing movements in Europe, deepening divisions across Western democracies. In 2014, Putin set his sights on Ukraine. Ukraine's pro-Western president had begun building ties with the EU and hinted at joining NATO, something Putin saw as unacceptable. Russian media fueled unrest in Ukraine's eastern regions while covert troops entered the country. Violence erupted, and in early 2014, Russia annexed Crimea outright. The conflict dragged on, leaving thousands dead and drawing outrage around the world. But Putin didn't back down. His aggression weakened neighboring states and rallied patriotic support at home, even as Western sanctions crippled Russia's economy. The ruble's value collapsed, trade dried up, and Russia's energy sector suffered. Still, Putin pressed on, determined to restore Russia's power on the global stage. When Donald Trump was elected in 2016, Putin saw a chance to reshape relations with the United States. Trump's softer stance on Russia and his criticism of NATO seemed to open the door for a new era of Russian dominance. Whether that vision will endure remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. Vladimir Putin's rise reshaped not just Russia, but the balance of power around the world. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to subscribe to Worldline Analysis and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into global power, politics, and history.